Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So, today we're taking a totally minimalist, almost forensic look at some really unique source material. And it tackles one of modern history's absolute heaviest subjects, the true story of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Now, instead of your standard chronological biography, the text we're analyzing today is, well, it's raw. It's heavily fragmented, and honestly, it's deeply atmospheric. By examining these scattered fragments, we're going to deconstruct the overarching themes and really try to piece together the profound gravity of the story.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material we're looking at revolves entirely around one central, incredibly profound mystery. What exactly is the true, tragic end of the man who built the atomic bomb? We so often focus on the explosion, right? The science, the blinding light of the Trinity test. But our source today forces us to look way past the act of creation and instead focus intensely on the creator's ultimate fate. It really leaves us wondering about the severe personal fallout of such a literal world-altering invention.
And that brings us to the original Sinhala text from the title of her source. Translated directly into English, it reads, "The incredibly tragic fate of the atomic bomb's creator." Now, this isn't just a title. It's basically the thesis statement for our entire analysis today. It frames Oppenheimer's narrative not as some triumphant victory lap of scientific achievement, but as a deeply sorrowful, absolutely inevitable conclusion. It sets this incredibly heavy, reflective tone that, as you'll see, is actually mirrored in the very structure of the raw text itself.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the atomic focus, a fragmented legacy.
So when you look at the raw transcript of our source, it's highly fragmented. Actually, it's almost like the text itself was shattered by a blast wave, leaving only these disjointed characters, broken words, and just scattered data. But to understand the true story being told here, we've got to strip away all that noise to find the core, surviving elements that really anchor the narrative. And out of that shattered text, one specific word clearly emerges: Parma. In the context of this fragmented script, it stands out like a beacon. It means pertaining to the atomic or atom. So the crucial takeaway here is that amidst the absolute chaos of all those surrounding letters, this one root concept remains completely indestructible. It firmly anchors our narrative to his devastating creation. Oppenheimer's identity in this source is just inextricably, eternally linked to the atom. There's simply no separating the man from this fundamental particle he helped unleash.
Which brings us to Section 2, the era of 19, a chaotic century.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that as we scan through the source material, we transition from scattered words to numbers. The text uses these recurring numeric motifs to represent a highly chaotic era. It's not giving us clean, precise dates. Instead, it's throwing numerical fragments at us, kind of forcing us to feel the temporal instability of the world during Oppenheimer's life. We see this heavy, disjointed repetition of the number 19, just scattered throughout the transcript. 19, 19, 19. It reads almost like a stuttering telegraph wire, right? And this isn't just random data, it's a powerful symbol of the tumultuous 1900s, the 20th century. This was the exact era where all this history unfolded, a century totally defined by rapid, terrifying technological advancement and global conflict. The repetition, visually and even rhythmically, traps us right in that specific anxiety-ridden time period.
But then suddenly, the pattern breaks. We find this abrupt variation in the text, 199. And it really jolts the reader. Just as you get totally used to the rhythm of the 19s, boom, this anomaly appears. It adds to the almost frantic, fragmented numeric motif of the era we're examining. It feels like an acceleration, a sudden escalation of stakes, very much like the rapid, uncontrollable escalation of the nuclear arms race that completely haunted Oppenheimer's later years. The data itself is reflecting a sudden loss of control.
And then, just as quickly, we're pulled backward with the brief appearance of the number 18. It's another isolated numerical fragment, contributing to the stark, chaotic data we're decoding here. Perhaps it serves as a ghostly echo of the past, a subtle reminder of the 1800s, right before classical physics was violently upended by quantum mechanics and the atomic age. These numbers, they don't tell a perfectly linear story at all. They create this wild psychological landscape of an era defined by overwhelming, disjointed forces.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 3, the tragic end, the ultimate fate.
Now, I want to deliberately slow the pace down just a little bit here. We really need to prepare ourselves for the stark contrast between a monumental act of scientific creation and the creator's deeply personal fate. And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic dichotomy of his life. On one side of the source text, we have the atomic creation, but deciphered from the latter half of the fragmented transcript is the word avassan. In this context, it translates to the end, a conclusion, or even demise. It perfectly juxtaposes the explosive birth of the atomic age with the slow, agonizing conclusion of the man who birthed it. I mean, the text literally places the atom on one side and his tragic end on the exact opposite side.
If you look closely at the source, you actually see scattered letters like J and O. These faint, almost ghostly initials of J. Robert Oppenheimer himself, just floating aimlessly alongside the word for video or recording. They surround this inescapable, somber theme of a tragic end. The creator is reduced to mere initials, completely fragmented and scattered across the historical record. Honestly, much like the ashes of his own legacy. It is such a powerful visual representation of a man broken by the sheer weight of his own achievement.
We really have to reflect deliberately on the central promise of the source title here. See, the text isn't interested in the politics, or the military strategy, or the shifting allegiances of the time. Not at all. It brings the focus squarely back to the heavy, emotional burden tied to his legacy. The true cost of creation wasn't just measured in the vast resources spent or the physical devastation, it was heavily measured in the fragmented conclusion of Oppenheimer's own spirit. The source basically demands that we acknowledge this terrible, terrible personal cost.
Which leads us to our final thought. We've sifted through the noise, the scattered numbers representing a chaotic century, and the broken words of this deeply, deeply atmospheric text. We've seen the atom and the tragic end placed right side by side. So I leave you with this. When the dust finally settles on such a monumental, world-breaking creation, what is the true weight of its tragic end? Does the brilliance of human discovery ever truly outshine the profound darkness of its consequence? Take a moment to really think about that. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope deconstructing this material has sparked a brand new perspective on a history we all thought we knew.